Hello and welcome to Shitposting from Golgotha. I am the Excremental, and look at my new photo. What a smug cunt I am. Chardonnay bitches. So, everything is shit and the entire world is coming to a grinding halt. We all literally cannot even. Well, so long as you discount the year the Permian-Triassic mass extinction event happened some 250 million years ago, or whatever year the Holocaust occurred. Okay, so a fuck ton of celebrities have died in the last 18 months, and 2016 seemed like more than most years. But the truth is that some 4 months after the year rung out, how many of you can name, without looking at the notable deaths section for that year on Wikipedia? 5. Now I'll take a stab at this. Alan Rickman, Prince, David Bowie, Victoria Wood, and... Okay, now I'm stuck. I got 4, and yeah, I might have rattled those off a little quickly, but I would really need to put some brain power into naming a 5th, and, well, naming a 6th would be right out of the question. Anyway, now, don't get me wrong, it sucks when people die, but death is a part of life, and at least with their respective talents, their names will live on for a long, long time. We call this a legacy, and the sad thing about legacies is that the person must die for it to be recognised. So, here I am sitting at a £1,000 touchscreen PC, listening to music on a pair of £150 headphones, playing from a £10 per month premium streaming service, sipping a £4 latte from Starbucks, typing a script on a £100 word processing program, soon to be recording the audio on a £70 multi-tracking program, editing the video on an £800 video editing suite, to then finally be uploaded to YouTube in all the glory of 1080 progressive full high definition, and wondering, just how shit can things really be? What is it that is making people stake a claim that today is so much worse than yesterday? Could it be the war in the Middle East? Well, that's been raging for over 2,000 years now, so it surely cannot be that. How about the migrant crisis in Europe? I guess, but if you ask some people, they'll tell you that it's not a crisis and that Europe is just being the moral arbiter of the world and carrying out its duty as part of the First World. Beside the fact that immigration to Europe has been skyrocketing for decades, albeit different races and nationalities varying over time, but in general, not much has changed. Okay, so we are obviously going to have to dig a little deeper here and really root out what the hell is going on. Wait, I think I have an idea, so hear me out. Just scrolling through Twitter, Facebook and YouTube, I have noticed that all these claims of woe and misery appear to be coming from regressive lefties and media sources with a left-wing bias like the BBC, CNN and Al Jazeera. Additionally to these mainstream sources, there are some web-only based sources such as Vice, Vox and BuzzFeed, all getting in on the action. If we roll with this for a moment, maybe we can consider what might have rattled their cages and possibly help them unrustle their jimmies. May 2010 and the United Kingdom have just finished counting the votes for a general election. Neither of the two major parties could secure enough votes to declare an outright victory, so it came down to the third party in the rankings to form a coalition to create a majority in the House of Commons. Nick Clegg, leader of the Liberal Democrats, having met with David Cameron and Gordon Brown, made the ultimate decision to go into coalition with the Conservatives, citing that there was notably larger support for Cameron and the Tories, and it was his civic duty to side with them. This led to widespread trouble, stirred up mostly by regressive lefties between the ages of 16 and 25. Of course, there were a few over that age group, but that is merely an observation I made from the images I was exposed to. A year later, in 2011, protests erupted into violence and riots throughout the United Kingdom. The original protests began in the Tottenham area of London after the fatal shooting of 29-year-old Mark Duggan. The entry on Wikipedia regarding this event states, Mark Duggan, a 29-year-old British man, was shot and killed by police in Tottenham, North London, on the 4th of August 2011. The Metropolitan Police stated the officers were attempting to arrest Duggan on suspicion of planning an attack and that he was in possession of a handgun. Duggan died from a gunshot wound to the chest. The circumstances of Duggan's killing resulted in public protests in Tottenham, which led to conflict with the police and escalated into riots across London and other English cities. Now take note of other English cities. Duggan was under investigation by Operation Trident, a subdivision of the Metropolitan Police. He took possession of a BBM Brunei Model 92 handgun, which is a blank firing replica of a Beretta 92 converted to fire live rounds. 15 minutes before he was shot, from Kevin Hutchinson Foster. A trial of Hutchinson Foster in September to October 2012 yielded new evidence and reports on the case. The jury failed to reach a verdict. At his retrial on the 31st of January 2013, Hutchinson Foster was convicted of supplying Duggan with the gun. The Independent Police Complaints Commission, or the IPCC, has been investigating the case but has delayed release of its report for more than a year. A public inquest on the Duggan killing began on the 16th of September 2013 and ended on the 8th of January 2014 with an 8-2 majority concluding that Duggan's death was a lawful killing. The official account of Duggan's death has undergone numerous changes, drawing criticism and suspicion from his family, residents of Tottenham and other supporters. These critics accuse police of misconduct and of failing to cooperate with those investigating Duggan's death. Shortcomings in the police response have also been blamed for stoking the riots and for fueling ongoing discontent, with Duggan supporters stating there can be no peace without justice. Anyway, these riots emulated those that occurred in Brixton in 1984, and much like the Brixton riots, there was no founded legitimacy. In fact, I recall the news reporting that in Clapham, a group of residents took to the streets to stand up to an oncoming gang of youths to protect their property, only to be met with the chant, "You're the rich, we're the poor, tonight the city is ours." So, maybe excepting those who knew Mr. Duggan in North London, any other riots that occurred were just a matter of wanton destruction and an excuse to cause some fucking trouble. Not that I would ever insinuate the left would cause trouble just for the shits and giggles of it, no. Which brings me forward a couple of years to 2015, when David Cameron and the Conservatives threw a spanner in the works of the left-wing biased media and won 331 seats in the House of Commons, giving them a majority government and so triggering the self-destruct button for the Labour Party. I believe that in no small part was the 2015 election won on two single facts. The voting public are fed up with the left-wing's bullshit, and the Conservatives were the only party promising a referendum on the United Kingdom's continued membership with the European Union. But more about that shortly. Every single opinion poll leading up to the 2015 general election was adamant that the results were too close to call, or promising a hung parliament. Oh, how they could not have been more wrong. And for those of us wise to the media's bullshit, we recognised that they were merely attempting to swing the vote to Labour or the Lib Dems, knowing it would lead to a Lab-Lib coalition, which is the long way around saying, stop the Tories. Nevertheless, the media were wrong, and the truth about just how wrong they were should have given them a little bit of an indicator towards how the European Union referendum would go. But we shall come to that shortly. After the Tories won the 2015 general election, the left wing decided to cast democracy entirely aside and stake claims that the Conservatives did not win the general election and that they did not actually have a majority. Okay, let's look at the facts. The Conservatives won 11 million votes, compared with Labour's 9 million and the Scottish National Party's 1.5 million and the Liberal Democrats' 2.5 million. Now, I'm not sure if the left took mathematics at school or they just deemed maths a social construct devised by the bourgeoisie or the patriarchy to keep the social and working classes at bay, but that is indeed a majority for the Conservatives. 11 is higher than 9. So, this is the only photograph I need to show you from the 2015 protests in London. Yes, they got violent, and yes, many of them were arrested whilst yelling police brutality. I do recall a chant from the television. It was about 11 AM on a Wednesday afternoon, and there were hundreds of people dressed entirely in black and carrying the red and black flags representing anarcho-syndicalism, marching up Victoria Street towards Parliament Square and chanting, "Students and workers, unite and fight." And all I could think to myself was, well, there can't be anyone there other than students, because the workers are all at work mid-morning on a Wednesday. But these uniforms bear a big relevance to something a bit further on in this video. Nevertheless, as you can see in this image, some scumbag has defaced the Women of World War II memorial with the quote, "Fuck Tory scum" graffitied in red paint. And I'm sure it was universally agreed that the only scum that was present at Parliament that day was the little cunt who did that. Now, I vaguely remember there being protests and riots in the wake of the United Kingdom's European Union membership referendum result. No, actually, it was 12 months ago and I remember it very fucking clearly. The problem is with my memory here is I only really remember one thing about the arguments thrown forward by the losing side, that the most of those who voted to leave the European Union were over 60 years of age and shouldn't have had the right to opinion of the future of this nation because they would be dead soon. Yes, as you can see from this fabulously terrible chart, way over half of the over 55s age group voted to leave the European Union on June 23rd. Those who claim to be the liberal side of politics were disgusted at the premise that they were allowed to hand in the decision that they needed to demonstrate roughly how long each age group would have to live with the decision. I mean, let's just forget the fact that the over 55s age group will be the only people in the country who remember what it was like to not be a member of the European Union, and that the over 55s age group is the only one who contains those who fought a fucking war for us to have the civil liberties such as that to vote in a democracy. Many of those protesting the EU referendum results were also quoted to be staking claims that it was that very same age group who brought us into the European Union in the first place. But that is utter horseshit, because the United Kingdom was duped by the forefathers of the EU, because what we have today is not what was offered in the 1970s. I will be making another video to explain the history of how the European Union came to be, and how the United Kingdom were forced into it without us really agreeing to it. In other words, we were tricked. But anyway, I think we can pretty much chalk this example up to a widespread case of butthurt, but surely a country bearing only 1% of the world population couldn't be the cause of everything being shit. I mean, I can understand that the regressive left is a little upset because, up to this point, they're losing 3-0 to the right. Truth be told, the left is actually losing 4-0 now, because late last year the most unexpected thing occurred when Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump won the presidential election. Now we're up to 3 times the left-wing media predicted right-wing losses, and 3 times the left-wing media were utterly wrong. So, 4 months into Donald Trump's presidency, and what has happened? Well, the regressive left predicted literally the end of the world, and seemed to be the only people going about attempting to set it in motion. You see, since Donald Trump announced his presidential election bid, every single political event in the United States that promotes free speech has been overrun or simply shut down due to the regressive lefties turning up and causing outbreaks of violence. Lauren Southern, Milo Yiannopoulos and Ben Shapiro have all had events cancelled due to violence, and any kind of student Republican event at universities across the United States has just simply sparked violence. At the most recent violent protest at Berkeley, the regressive left was met with something they were not expecting though: a response. In lieu of the left publicly organising themselves to attend the pro-Trump rally in Berkeley, and especially with dumb cunts like this girl, those who were attending the event, and some notable figures from the alt-right, such as Nathan D'Amigo, of the far-right organisation Identity Evropa, they decided to respond to violence. With violence. Now, I don't really agree with violence because I see it as the actions of the man who has exhausted all intellectual debate. However, it was mighty refreshing to see this. Yes, that is a scuffle between the previously mentioned persons, ending in her getting punched square between the eyes. Now, before you think that's a little unfair, I'd like to point out that Ms. Rosales is wearing a weighted glove, which is illegal in California, and she jumped into that brawl fists first, so it's a little bit far-fetched to assume she wasn't there to peacefully protest. Sorry, don't turn up to a fight hell-bent on, quote, collecting Nazi scalps, and then run home to Tumblr and Twitter playing the victim when you get knocked the fuck out. I mentioned previously the importance of the uniforms that the left-wing protesters in 2015 in London were wearing, and that's because it appears that it was actually a precursor to the Antifa or anti-fascist movements that have sprung up all over America, mostly by teenagers or early 20s, jobless, unemployed, just losers, essentially, wanting to cause trouble anytime that they are confronted with right-wing politics or the freedom of speech, which in their eyes is fascism. So yes, there will be more in later videos about Antifa because they're not going anywhere for the time being, and they're going to be the subject of many, many debates politically in the near future. So, why is everything so shit? Well, you're going to need to find some regressive left-wing millennial crybaby, give them a bunch of trigger warnings and take them to a safe space where they can play the victim whilst telling you that they want to bash the fash, punch a Nazi, or collect Nazi scalps. Just don't ask them who constitutes a Nazi in their eyes, because just by asking that, you might find yourself having your scalp collected. So you can bet your bottom dollar that this shit's going to require 2 flushes.